This summer, I went to a camp called Seeds of Peace, where I attended the international session, and Seeds hosts campers from opposing conflict zones. So Seeds hosts campers that are kids from different war zones. Seeds was started by a journalist, his name is John Wallach, as a way to affect change in the Middle East, because he was reporting on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and he was becoming increasingly upset because it seemed like it was impossible to solve this conflict. He kept seeing kids who were our age that were filled with hatred and fear by their circumstances. They had no way of ever meeting each other. There was no possible circumstance that would bring together someone living in the West Bank and someone living in Tel Aviv that wouldn't involve violence or screaming. So John Wallach decided to create that space. And he made a camp in the woods of Otisfield, Maine, with bunks that are wooden shacks and food that's kind of gross, a beautiful lake, a garden with the only fresh vegetables in camp, and showers that don't always work. It's just a normal camp. Except currently the international session deals with two conflicts, the South Asian conflict and the Middle Eastern, and hosts 7 delegations, kids from 7 countries: India, Pakistan, Egypt, Jordan, Israel, Palestine, and America and the UK. At Seeds, we have to attend a dialogue session every day. Dialogue is a 2-hour discussion that's mediated by 2 trained adults, one from Israel and one from Palestine, if you're in the Middle Eastern dialogue group. I was part of the Middle Eastern dialogue group because the Israeli-Palestinian conflict feels very relevant to my life, considering I don't live in the Middle East. I spent my whole life and my years at Schechter hearing about the conflict. I visited Israel many times, and I applied to Seeds because I had never met a Palestinian person. And I had never had a really honest conversation about the conflict with an Israeli person because I was afraid of disagreeing with someone that I cared about. My fear is what made dialogue sessions some of the hardest times of my life. Before Seeds, I had never been in a room with people screaming at each other. I was terrified of raised voices, and I didn't know how I would ever speak up in such a heated environment. In the first few weeks of camp, I hated dialogue. I dreaded it. I mean, my stomach would churn and my hands would sweat, but as camp went on, I started to look forward to our discussions. They were the things that gave my day purpose. I cared and I care so deeply about the 16 Israeli, Palestinian, Egyptian, Jordanian, and American kids that were in my dialogue group, and I genuinely wanted to hear what they had to say. And they wanted to hear what each other had to say. There were so many times when I felt that Palestinians were listening to Israelis, and Israelis were listening to Palestinians, and it felt like a miracle. There were also many times when it felt like no one was listening to anyone. Dialogue is really hard, and we had to work for trust and respect. One of the most accurate things I ever heard about Seeds was said on the second to last night of camp as we were all sitting around a campfire. A counselor said, "Seeds is the only place I know where people can really bring all of themselves. Their laughter and their tears, their happiness, their silliness, their lightheartedness, their pain, their seriousness, and their worst memories." One of the main parts of the Seeds experience is that you see your dialogue group in all different circumstances, in their silliness and in their seriousness. A day at Seeds includes not only the 2 hours of intense and sad argument, but also 4 activity periods that you have to attend with your dialogue group. You could be playing soccer, basketball, or football, sitting in the hippie music shack trying to play an improvised song on guitars that are missing strings, or doing an improv scene, or painting our personal mantras in the art shack. We learn to see each other as real people, not just flags and nationalities, and we learn to trust each other through passing the ball or trust falls. It sounds so silly and impossible that some kids from Israel and some kids from Palestine became friends, or even learned to love each other over a game of street hockey, but I swear it happened. Throughout my time at Seeds, I was constantly confronted with my American identity and my American Jewish identity. When other kids were talking about fearing for their lives and the lives of their families, I realized I have never been in a situation with such high stakes. My life has never been in danger, and I will never have to make the choices that my friends from Seeds have to make. The amount of times I got, "Shut up, you American, what do you know," side glances was a lot. I went into camp trying really hard not to presume anything, not to correct anything, to just listen and learn. And I think that I did that. I didn't speak often in dialogue. I did cry. I sat in a plastic chair feeling guilty or angry or sad. I wanted so badly to understand the world and to understand Seeds. I wanted to know why I was here, what my role is as an American Jew. I wanted to know how so much suffering could exist in the world. And now that I was faced with this conflict head on, I wanted to know how it could be none of our faults, none of their faults, and yet affect each of us so deeply, and somehow be our responsibility to solve it. I wanted to know why I was spared the experience of growing up in the Middle East. I wanted to talk to you guys about Seeds because I grew up in Schechter, and the Jewish education I received here is a large part of the reason I wanted to go to Seeds. I knew our side of the story so well. I knew about our American Jewish or American Israeli connection to Israel. I knew about my Jewish values, and I knew about the love I have for Jewish people around the world. What I didn't know anything about was Palestinian people or Arab people. I didn't know what their perspective was. I didn't know how they really saw the conflict. I didn't know how they were living, and I didn't know how they felt. At Seeds, I learned some of that from some Palestinian people, and I will forever be grateful that they chose to share with me how the conflict has affected them. And I will be forever grateful to myself that I chose to listen. I chose to hear some things that were really painful, that made me cry, that made me angry, and I tried to see the truth in those things. I tried to see where my friends were coming from. I chose to engage fully in conversations that I never thought that I would have. I chose to be really vulnerable with people who I didn't think would support me, and 9 times out of 10, we all supported each other. I chose to try, I chose to empathize, I chose to listen to people that are really different from me, and I chose to believe those people that are different from me. As a result, I saw people all around me suffering. I saw more than just my side. I heard the Palestinian side, and I saw my friends, and I saw that they were in pain, and I saw that they didn't deserve it. I saw that they had done nothing wrong. I saw that they were just kids. And they were just trying to grow up and be safe. For the first time, I saw that Palestinians are people like us, and that they are real, and that they deserve dignity and safety, the same way that we do. And that's what I believe in. I believe in looking at both sides. I believe in listening. I believe in seeing the humanity in everyone. I believe in not letting hate or nationality get in the way of seeing another person and making a friend. I believe in helping everyone no matter where they come from. And I believe in building the world together with love.
That was tremendous. John, and before we open it up to questions, and we are going to open it up to questions, I want to tell you that you're a great source of pride for Schechter, and you're a great source of pride for the program, Seeds of Peace, and we are lucky that you're part of our community, and the world is lucky that we have people like you who are going to bring peace into the next generation. So let's hear it again for them. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah. Did they all speak English?
It was tough. I mean, to go to Seeds, you have to take like a test that says that you can speak English, but some people their English wasn't great, so there were times when people would have to translate for each other. But most people, everyone spoke like a degree of English.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Did you learn a bit of their language as well?
I tried. I mean, there's a rule at Seeds that says everyone has to speak English all the time, which, as you can imagine, is super difficult if English isn't your first language. So there were a lot of times when everyone would be speaking like Arabic and Hebrew and like Hindi and Urdu, which I have no like semblance of understanding. But I sort of picked up an ability to know what's going on, even if you don't understand the words.
So you talked about understanding. Can you think of a time when somebody heard somebody else's perspective and was like, oh my God, I had no idea?
Yeah. There were a lot of times. There were a lot of times when in dialogue we would be like sitting in a circle and someone would share something from their life, like something really painful. Like, my uncle was arrested or my brother was shot, and people would support each other and then at the end say, I didn't know it was like that. And there were a few distinct times when people were talking about like political issues, talking about like paying Palestinians money for land. And there was an Israeli kid who said, that's never going to happen, I don't believe that needs to happen. And we had a discussion, and by the end of it, he actually changed his mind about that, which was incredible to me.
Ms. Hollop, is it okay if we go to students first? Okay. All right, Jonah and Lon, and then Ms. Hollop.
Well, you were saying you got a lot of like, you used to be American, what would you know looks?
Yeah.
Did you ever feel like kind of left out from the discussion because you grew up in such a safe, cushy, comfortable environment?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, I didn't do a lot of contributing to the discussion because I felt that way. Because I felt like, what do I bring to this? I'm just kind of here to learn. And I actually think that was the right decision. That seems they kind of tried to tell us that we all should contribute equally, but to me, it felt like the right thing for me to do was to listen more.
Lon?
Did you feel like there was a big difference in the way people talked and supported or didn't support each other in dialogue from like the beginning or the end of the camp session?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I talked later to facilitators and to like staff at the camp, and they said that almost every dialogue group sort of goes through the same journey of in the beginning being sort of shy and not wanting to argue with each other, and then really yelling at each other, like screaming, and through that building some kind of community, and also through like playing sports together, tag or whatever, and then becoming friends, and then still not wanting to yell at each other again because you don't want to mess up your friendships, and then finally getting to the point where you can like scream at this person, but then also listen to them and get emotional and still be friends at the end of it.
Ms. Hollop?
I just wondered, do you think that any of those kids will stay in touch after camp? Like, when they go back and reality is there again, that we're Palestinians and they're Israelis, do you think that any of them will keep in touch or remain friendly after the experience?
I think a lot of people have. I know it's really tough. When I've talked to kids from Seeds afterwards, kids from Israel and Palestine, they say a lot about like, this is so different from Seeds, this is so hard, this isn't how it should be. But Seeds does programs in Jerusalem for Israeli and Palestinian Seeds to come together and have like group sessions. I don't know that they like hang out together regularly, but I know that they still respect each other and care about each other.
I think there are a lot of questions because our other students can see themselves in you a lot, probably because you went here and because you're so articulate and you're really able to speak to something that's very personal. For the sake of time, we're going to dismiss you. I don't know how long you can stick around, but if you want to ask any questions right afterwards, maybe a few extra minutes, but generally we should dismiss you to your first period class. Sure, of course. Yeah.
If you guys want to apply to Seeds when you're 14, so after you're a freshman in high school, unfortunately you can't do it if you're 14 in the 8th grade, but you should, and then you should also contact me and I'll talk to you about it.
Thank you. Let's hear it again.